to another video. If you're new, my name's Emma, I'm an illustrator based in Sheffield, and these are my daily-ish vlogs. And in today's video, it's a long-awaited video. I'm going to show you how to mount a picture that you might have done it yourself, you might have bought it from someone else, but you want to put it in a frame and you want to make it look professional with a proper mount. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. I'll show you all the materials that I'm going to use, all of the equipment that makes the job much easier. None of it's sponsored, it's just stuff that I've bought because I'm an illustrator. Sometimes I frame my own work and I sell it at markets. It's a really nice skill to have, even if you're not an illustrator, if you just want to decorate your house and mount any art that you get in a more cost-effective way than sending it off to a picture framers, which can be quite expensive. So today I'm going to be framing up this piece of art, which I got from Yuck Fun. And I really love it. It's a cat with two riders in the back, and it really reminded me of me and Andy, my partner, and our cat Rolly. We often go on adventures together. He's a harness cat, so it kind of fit. It really spoke to me. So the first thing is just picking a frame. You want something, ideally, if you're going to mount it, you want something that's bigger than the picture. You can obviously, this is A4, you could buy an A4 frame and just put that straight in. Sometimes you can buy frames with mounts included, but that really relies on you having the right shape inside the picture to fit the pre-cut mount. Oftentimes, if you've got an even border all the way around your picture, these will probably fit and it'll probably be fine. But sometimes you may want to fit something that's a bit of an abnormal shape. You might want to fit something that's very small into the middle of a very big frame, just have that impact. Or you might have a picture that's slightly offset. I've had some before where the picture is up on the top part and then the title's underneath. You might want to mount it in a way that frames just the picture, which will require a slightly abnormal shape. Now I've got these two frames, one that I bought from a shop ages ago and it's got one of my old photographs in it, and one that I got from a charity shop and it's got someone else's photograph in it. This one I'm preferring, not just because it's glass rather than plastic, and this has got a few scratches. The plastic on the front's got a few scratches on it, but I think the colour works better. The frame colour works better, even though it's knocked about a bit and it's got a few dents and stuff. I kind of like that aged look for this. It's quite a neat and tidy print, but it's got a lot of organic stuff going on in it, so this doesn't really matter to me, the scuffs and things. But I think the warmer tones work with the colours that are in it, and I think that the black frame on here, even though generally black frames go with everything, I think it dulls the image down. I think it sucks the life out of it, whereas when you put it against this one, I think the colours just work more harmoniously. So this is the frame I'm going to choose. Now I'm going to go into my materials cupboard, get the materials that are going to make this job much easier, and I'm going to talk you through them and how you can also use them to mount your own pictures. So the things that I've got for this process, apart from my picture and my frame, are a cutting mat, because we're going to be cutting some mounting board. I've also got mounting board, which this is just cream. It's got cream on the outer and cream on the inner. You can also get two-coloured mount. The type of mount is up to you. The process is going to be the same. So I've got my mounting board, I've got my cutting mat, and to cut the mounting board I've got these things. So what I use is something that I bought specifically for framing. Like I say, I'm not sponsored. This is just what I've got. This one happens to be Logan Team Systems, not sponsored. I don't know where I got this from. I don't know how long ago I got it, but it comes as a set with not just a ruler, but also with this 45-degree cutting angle, which slots on to the edge of the ruler. Now what this does, when you line this up and you push this button down, it engages the blade, which is just there. It enables you to cut the mount at a 45-degree angle, so it just looks a bit more professional. So you can go around the aperture at the inside, the bit where your picture's going to show. So on this one here, you can see the old mount. The angle of the mount is at 45-degree angles going into the picture, and it just adds something a little bit more professional. I don't suppose you need to do that, but if you want it to look like the kind of mounting that you would be getting from a professional framer, this is a really handy tool. So if you are going to be doing a lot of mounting and a lot of framing, I would recommend this if it is within your budget. Along with that, so this can be used as a ruler on its own, but also this little attachment just makes it really handy for cutting that angle really precisely. It also came with a mat knife. This is the Logan Model 500 using the 270 blade. Nothing sponsored here. What I might do before I start is change out the blades. I found some of the spare blades there. So that's what those are. This one here is just a straight Stanley knife type blade, just a razor blade in a holder. And this just means that I can cut, always put your blades away when you're not using them. It just means I can cut the size of the mount. So rather than the aperture that I'll be using this little tool for, this one is just to get the size of the external dimensions of the mount. And that'll be the inside of the wooden frame at the back dimensions. So it slots in nicely. As a little extra, I've got a microfiber cloth for cleaning the glass inside and out. And to make sure that I don't leave fingerprints, I've also got some gloves. These weren't bought for the specific purpose of framing. I don't know where these are from. They look like golfing gloves. I don't golf. But they serve the purpose. I can handle the glass without leaving fingerprints. They've got slight grips on them, but I'm going to be very careful to make sure that these grips don't leave a mark as well, because that'll be counterproductive. So I've got things for cleaning the glass. And then once you've cut the size of your mount, cut the hole for your picture, and cleaned your glass, you're going to need to put it all together. So for this, I have got some UKIT Conservation Art tape. It's an acid-free tape, which you need to wet to make sticky. And this is going to be useful for actually hanging the art print onto the mount before you put it into the frame. And the way that I'm going to show you how to do it, make sure that over time your art print isn't going to sag or wrinkle. So stay tuned for how you actually get this art print hanging in the frame. And to do that, I use this conservation tape. So this is gummed archival paper tape, and it's a hinging tape for hanging your art print on there. It's good to get an acid-free one because you don't want this to be making any weird stains or age-related marks on it as the picture sits in its frame over time. And then also, to seal it all up again, I've got two different types of tape. I've only got this one because this one's running out. So this one is my favourite. It's Sekisu Japanese framing tape. Basically, this is tape that I would put on to tape up the backboard. So this isn't my framing here. This is one that I got from a charity shop. But you've got a backboard on here, and to seal it all up so that the picture doesn't fall out and the mount doesn't fall out, you just tape that into the frame. So I would normally use this, but I don't think I've got enough. I might have enough to do the back of those, but if not, I've got this similar type of stuff. It's artist gummed tape, ideal for paper stretching and picture framing. And just for transparency, this is the Loxley brand, but I'm not sponsored by any of these guys. Lastly, once your picture is all framed up, all taped up, and it's been cleaned, you're going to want to hang it. So I've got these little things. Don't know what brand these are. Don't know what brand these are. So they're just little eyelets that you screw onto the back of the picture frame. So ideally you'd hang them like this. You'd screw them into the back of the frame and the wire would go in between them that you're going to hang on. I've also got some little screws there to screw them in. One thing to make sure is that these screws are no thicker than your frame. If you've got screws that are too thick, they will screw all the way through and they will point out of the front of your picture. So this is the thickness of your frame. So when you're checking out the screws to use, one good way to do it is to get one of the screws that this is going to be screwed into. So underneath here, they'll have the same kind of screws there. So this is how they'll kind of sit. This is what I was talking about. But you want to make sure that these screws are not going to be too thick for the frame of your piece. These ones may just and so, oh no, they should be fine. So these ones should just be fine as long as I screw it in the right place and it's on the thickest part of the frame, because it is beveled. What I might end up doing actually is reusing these things here, because they are already the right size for the frame. But if you've thrifted some frames and yours doesn't have that, don't worry, you can always buy your own attachments and put those on. I'm also going to be using a light box today, and I'll show you what I'm using this for later. If you don't have a light box, don't worry, you don't need one. What you can do instead of this is use just a window. I'll show you later what I'm talking about, but as long as you've got a window and it's light outside, you can use the method that I'm using to hang your picture within the mount. It's not necessary at all, so don't panic if you haven't got this equipment. It's just because I've got it that I'm using it. So if you're anything like me and you're going to be repurposing an old frame that you got from the charity shop or one that's been just knocking around the house, the first thing you're going to want to do is take the old picture out and the old mount. And be careful while you're doing it, because we can use some of these things to potentially measure what we're going to be cutting and putting back in. It really does pay to spend a bit of time cleaning the inside, especially of your picture, because the glass inside is never going to be able to be cleaned again. If you have a fingerprint or a smudge, it's going to be a real pain to undo all of your work and get rid of that smudge. So it's worth checking at all stages before you tape up the back of the frame to make sure there's no smudges, nothing that's going to really annoy you, no speck of dust that's going to be just in the way. I've learned from bitter experience. So if you're anything like me and that kind of thing would bug you, just make sure you just spend a bit of time before you tape up the final thing, just to make sure that the inside of that glass is really clean. Okay, so this is the old mount and backing board. What this person who framed this one did is stick the mounting board to the backing board. Now that's not necessary, you don't need to do that, and it's a bit of overkill, to be honest. You can see here what's happened is they've taped the top of the image. That's what we're going to be doing with our archival acid-free tape. This is what stops your picture buckling. If you tape that all the way around, if a bit of moisture got in there and the paper started to buckle, then it would be like that forever. But if it's hanging from the top, the weight of the paper will keep it straight within the mount. And this is what I was talking about before as well, about why you might want to mount your own pictures, because this has been mounted. You can see where the sun's faded it. Nice picture. They could specify which part of the picture they wanted in the frame, in the mount, and also it's an off-center dimensions. So this wouldn't fit very well with my picture because the white frame, you don't see it. My picture's too big. But when you frame your own, when you mount your own pictures at home, you have the freedom to cut a mount to the size of picture that you've got and make it look beautiful, rather than trying to shoehorn your art into a standard pre-bought frame, and it might not quite work. So what we're going to do is use this as a template for cutting out our mount board, and then we're going to cut a bespoke size for our aperture. And we're going to do that with a tiny little bit of maths, but don't be put off. You can use the calculator on your phone, no problem. But first of all, I'm going to use these. They're the same size. I'll just make sure. Yeah. I'm going to use these just to draw around one sheet of this mount board and cut that out so we've got a usable piece of fresh mount to use. Also, I'm going to wash my hands. Make sure your hands are clean, because again, fingerprints on the mount, it'll annoy you forever if it is sealed away and you can't get at it to clean it. So there we go, that's my mount board cut to the size of the frame. It is worth checking at this point that this mount does fit. There you go, perfect. Sometimes at that stage you can just draw around any pre-existing mount that came with your frame. When I did that, the mount that they used was wonky on all sides. So I just measured the longest point of the mount, the original mount, on both sides and made that my dimensions. And when you're cutting it out of your big sheet of mount, it does pay to be really neat where those two cut lines join, because if you cut past them on both sides, you will be limiting the size of the mount that you can use in future. You don't want to come to have to mount another picture and find that your piece of mount board's got a slash through it just where you needed it to be nice. So now that this fits, we're going to work out the size of the aperture. So the aperture is just the hole. Let me put this somewhere out of the way so I don't end up standing on it. So what you're going to do is get the picture that you want And to work out the hole, right, you're going to measure. Firstly, we're going to work on the length. We're going to work on the longest point, the length, on both sides. So I am going to measure the length of my picture and make a note of it. Mine is a perfect A4 length, 29.5 centimetres. Get a bit of paper. When you've got the length of your art, you're now going to measure the length of your mount. So again, the longest side. And we're going to do the same for the height of each. So when I talk about the height, I'm talking about the shortest side. Obviously, if yours was orientated that way, your length would be this side and your height would be up here. As long as it makes sense to you, you're going to be measuring the respective sides. If yours is going to be mounted like this, you're going to measure this bit of your art and then this bit of your mount, and then this bit of your art and this bit of your mount. If it's going to be measured like this, you're going to do exactly the same. You're going to measure the respective sides. So because I've measured the longest side, I'm now going to measure the shortest side and make a note of it. And as the old adage goes, measure twice, cut once, because as much as you think you're sure of the measurement in the moment, it's amazing the amount of times you do something like this and your brain stops working halfway through and you put the wrong measurement down. So just double check those figures. Okay, this is where the little bit of maths comes in. What you're going to do is take the length. I'm going to do the long side first. We're going to take the length measurement of your mount. So mine is 400 millimetres or 40 centimetres. You're going to take away the length measurement of your image. So mine is 295. So once you've taken away the length of your art from the length of your mount, you should be left with a section which is going to be what's left of the mount. So on mine, my length of my mount was 400, the length of my art was 295, so I was left with 105. And that should just be the area of the mount you've got left on the length. I'm just going to double check it. Yes, the mount maths adds up. What we're going to do now, to find out where this is going to be sitting in the middle, we're just going to divide that number by 2, and that will tell you the measurements that should be on each side of the length. And then we're going to do that for the height again. But we're not finished there, because we can't just cut that size out, because you want the mount to be slightly bigger than the art. But we'll work that bit out in a second. First, what you're going to do is take away the length of your art measurement from the length of your mount measurement. Then you're going to do the same for the height of your art measurement to the height of your mount measurement, and then divide them by 2. Okay, have you done that? If it doesn't make sense yet, don't worry, because if you just keep watching and seeing how it works out, you might get a better idea than listening to me trying to explain it with words. So for my art to sit in the middle of my mount, I should now have 42.5 centimetres on each side, top and bottom, and 52.5 centimetres on each side, left to right. We're not going to mark anything, we're just going to measure it and just see. When you do that, you'll have the exact centre of your mount. And this is what I've got here. But like I said before, if you cut this mount to these dimensions now, your art would just fall through the hole. So what do? We need to add a little bit of measurement on to the measurements that you've just taken. So the measurements that we've got at the moment have basically calculated this size out of the middle of your mount. This next bit is going to be dependent on what your art looks like. So my art doesn't go to the very edge. I've got a slight white border around there. I want to keep a little bit of this white border, so I'm not going to add on the full amount that I've got spare for my image, because I've got some writing down here and I want to keep that on there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab a different ruler this time, that one's a bit big. What I'm going to do is just measure how much space I have before the writing starts that I want to keep. So I've got about 1/2 centimetre. I don't know what that is in non-metric, but I've got about 1/2 centimetre. If you look at a ruler, you'll be able to work out your other size. You measure it for you. So what I'm going to do is add 1/2 centimetre on for each side that I've just measured. 1/2 centimetre is 5 millimetres. So I'm going to go add 5 millimetres, and that's 47.5. In fact, I'm going to round it up to 48 because that will be easier. And on the other side, I've got 52.5 millimetres, so that'll be 57.5, but I'm going to round it up to 58 millimetres. Okay, now is the fun bit. We're going to measure from the outside of our mount inwards with our new measurements, which should include the allowance that we've got for our border. If your art goes all the way up to the edge, you might not mind how big and thick your border is. If you've got things like the writing on the bottom, someone signed it and you want to keep the signature visible, you might want to make the border, the allowance, a little bit smaller. It's up to you. This section is up to you. What you don't want to do is cut the exact dimensions that you measured first out, because like I say, your art will just fall straight through the hole. And I'm just going to measure that out. So I've got 58 millimetres on each side. I'm going to very lightly draw the measurements with a dot on the forward facing side of the mount. So on a piece of mount board, you've got the back, which tends to not have any kind of pattern on it. You can use that if you want to. And then the front that's got the pattern, the texture that you want to keep. You probably bought it because of this texture. Some of it is coloured, some of it isn't. I'm going to be using the forward facing, the bit that you'll see in the frame. So what you want to do is be very light with any pencil marks that you use. Don't use pen, because you want to be able to erase them. If you make any mistakes, ideally, if you get the measurements right straight away, you'll be cutting through them so you won't see them. But if you do make any mistakes, you want to be able to erase those. So super light, really light hand here. So what I'm going to do is measure 58 millimetres on the long side and 48 millimetres on the short side. So I've measured my new measurements and I've put a dot in the corner of each area that I'm going to cut. And you can check that it's the right size, because if you line up the picture, so for the length, if you line it up to the two dots, it should be a little bit shorter than the length. And also, if you do it with the other side, it should be a little bit shorter than the height, which it is. So I'm good to cut. I'm going to stand up for this so I get a good view on it. When you're using your cutting attachment, you want to make sure that you're using it on the reverse. In fact, I think I've messed up. I'm going to put these measurements on the reverse side. Every day is a school day, because I've noticed that I've remembered that there's a little mark on the back of there, and that will tell you whether you've hit your line or not. And if I do it my way around, this isn't going to line up with any of my lines. So every day is a school day. And in fact, a good reason for doing it on the back, not just because it works, because you can use the lines to make sure you get a 45-degree cut by cutting inside the aperture. You can draw lines because no one's going to see them. So I'm trying to rub out my marks on the front, because I'm not going to need those at all. And hopefully, if you cut it right, you'll end up with something just like this. Fingers crossed. Let's just check to see that the image fits in there before we take it out of the plastic packaging. And it does. So just for an idea, it fits in. It's not going to fall out of there. It's just and so bigger than the hole. Perfect. Right, onto the next section now. For this next bit, I'm going to be using fresh water and a clean cloth, because the tape that we're going to be using to hang this is gummed, so it needs to be wet slightly before it can stick. And if you're using the same materials I am, yours will be just the same. So what I'm going to do is just cut about 1.5 inches, about that much. 2 of those, about 1.5 inches long, to hold the picture at the top. About that size-ish. And they're going to eventually go one there-ish and one there at the back of the mount. So I'll put those there for later. I'm going to take this out of its protective packaging now. And this next section is what I use my light box for, but it's not necessary. You can do this by eye. And if you don't want to do it by eye, you can do it on a window instead. But I will be using my light box. So yeah, the reason I use my light box is because it helps me to center this in the mount and make sure it's straight. So you can do it by eye, by like kind of holding it up to a window so you can kind of see through it. Make sure you get kind of left and right, and then place it down gently. Wet these with a bit of water on a clean cloth and stick it down. Or if you want to be a real pedant like me, get yourself a light box or a window, and then you can take your time, you can measure that you've got it centered, and you can be sure that it's in the middle. Let me show you how I do it. But like I say, it's not necessary at all, at all, at all. So all the light box does is just puts a bit of light underneath your image. I don't know how bright I'm going to need this. But let's see. So if I put this face down, I can see now, hang on, let's make it brighter. I don't know if you can see on there, but I can see now really clearly how much overlap my art's got. So I can measure with a ruler to make sure that I've got an equal amount of space on either side, either from the edge of my artwork or from the edge of the artwork inside. Because this is a resaw print, I'm probably going to go from the internal dimensions just to double check that the picture is sitting flat, because if it was printed slightly wonky, I don't want it to be hanging slightly wonky. Again, you don't need to do this. And then when you've got your measurements just right, you're going to get your gummed tape, you're going to get your adhesive section, damp it slightly with a damp cloth, and you're going to stick it on one side and the other. So now, because we've taped that as a hinge just on the top one, like I said earlier, the weight of this picture should hold itself straight in the frame. All we need to do now is just check for any last minute smudges on the inside of our glass and pop it all together. You may need to cut a square piece of mount to go on the back of this if you don't already have a mount board. I might try and reuse the one that's from down there, but I might end up cutting myself another one. It's just going to be the same outer dimensions as the first bit of mount. So, very happy with that. So I usually use the self-gummed stuff, but I'm pretty sure there's not enough left on there. Maybe there is. I'm going to try this, but if not, I would have just used the same technique to wet the back of this as I did with the other stuff. And then I would have stuck that down. But I might as well use this as soon as I've got it. And remember, don't discard this bit that was cut out of the middle, because that is really useful for smaller frames. And I do have a couple that this would definitely fit. So I'm going to put that back in with my other bits of mount board. And I'm going to keep a little store. You can save yourself some real money by doing that. So the next thing to do is to put the hooks on the back. Now, these hooks came with this frame, but you can buy hooks separately. What I might do with these, because I know these are going to go on the stairs eventually, rather than screwing them in like this, which way around, like this, I'm going to screw mine in outwards, because I know I'm going to put a screw through there and attach it to the wall that way to keep it more sturdy. But the method is the same. You basically want to take the measurement of this height, make sure you've got it the right way up so the top is at the top. You want to divide it by 3-ish, and you want to put this at the top third. You can do it by eye. I'm going to do it by eye. But you do not have to do it by eye. You can do it by measurements too. I'm going to pick a measurement. I'm going to measure how far it is from the top, and I'm going to do it that way. But as long as it's in vaguely the top third, you'll get a good hang from it. So here it is, the finished item, not in its final place. I decided to actually put a string on the back rather than using the 2 eyelets for screws because we're not ready to put it in the stairs yet. So I might as well be using it. But I'm very pleased with how that's turned out, and I really hope this video has been useful to you. I know that some of it did entail like more technical specialist equipment, but if you are planning on framing a lot of art for your house, or if you're an artist and you want to sell framed prints, this is one way of doing it. And the fact that I got a little bit muddled up about how to do it halfway through should give you heart. You can muddle your way through these things. But for just a few pieces of specialist equipment, like the angle cutter for the inside of the mount, you can get a really professional look for a lot less than a lot of professional framers. So have a go, let me know what you think. If you found this useful, please do drop a comment, give a like, and maybe consider subscribing to my channel. The rest of my channel is usually me doing daily-ish vlogs. I am an illustrator based in Sheffield, and my vlogs are sometimes informal, sometimes informative. But if you did like this video, I'm assuming you'll like my other content, so why not give me a subscribe? No obligation though, don't feel like you have to. But yeah, I hope this has been useful, and hopefully I will catch you in the next video. So until then, bye!